Health on relationships. That was the topic at a local forum on Saturday where people can learn how to be more involved with their partner and not so involved with their own mind. For the second year in a row, an organization shows the community the importance of taking care of your mental health. 23 News reporter Alyssa Reamer learns more about the family reunion or the reunion forum directly from mental health experts.
This year, nonprofit Mentality Unchained hosted a forum that focuses on how mental health and past traumas can directly impact relationships and take a toll on families.
Can you imagine two people coming from two different backgrounds coming into a relationship, what they bring into the relationship?
Psychotherapist Kevin Thomas is with Mentality Unchained, a nonprofit which hosted a forum Saturday titled The Family Reunion, The Impact of Mental Health.
I wanted to bridge the gap between understanding what the traumas are and how it's impacting the family.
As part of this event, Thomas invited his close friends who are either single or in a relationship to participate in a panel discussion. Audience members got to hear real stories, real struggles, and real breakthroughs.
Just to really talk about their relationships and how their traumas or anything that they had in the past kind of impact their relationships.
Two of Saturday's panelists, Rebecca and Justin Francis, say they're a big supporter of therapy in their relationship.
Communication, they say, is one of the main reasons divorce happens. So I think therapy, openness is definitely great.
But when we go to therapy, we go separately and then we go together, right? So then you're solving and mitigating the internals of yourself and dealing with the past traumas and then coming together.
Thomas says it's important to educate the community on what mental health is and how to break the stigmas associated with it.
Bringing Rockford together through mental health is very important because it helps people to learn how to manage their relationships.
Mentality Unchained offers several services to the community, including keynote speaking, individual therapy, and marriage and family therapy.
If you or anyone you know struggles with suicidal thoughts, you can call or text the number 988, a suicide and crisis lifeline that offers 24/7 service toll-free to its customers.